Today, Norway has 51 unsolved murders. These are all very serious crimes. Yet a few stand out as they have been unsolved for a very long time or they are particularly heart-wrenching. An old lady walking home from work one evening, brutally murdered. Children out buying candy never to be seen again, most likely killed also. Although the police have exhausted every possible lead, they have so far ended up in a dead end in these criminal cases. The offenders of many of these crimes are still on the loose. What if the investigators could be given one clue to assist in solving these crimes? What if DNA databasing could bring justice to victims and closure to their families? Good afternoon. My name is Turid Haugen Tor and I work for Norwegian Criminal Investigative Services, NCIS Norway, at the DNA and Missing Persons section. Thank you so much to the Nordic Committee on Bioethics and the Norwegian Biotechnology Advisory Board for inviting me to participate, and also for bringing this very important discussion into the public eye and to the attention of the lawmakers. I would like to start with introducing my organization and look at how we work. What are the laws and regulations governing today's use of our DNA database KRIPOS and the DNA profiles in the National DNA Register? Since Norway had its DNA reform in 2008, new methods for using DNA in police work have been introduced. If able to use them, how would we go about it? Would the capabilities of DNA be able to protect the innocent? I will end my presentation with some closing remarks on the issue. NCIS has become a fairly large organization with 650 employees. Our main focus is to combat serious and organized crime, give assistance within the Norwegian police, and to be a competence center where law enforcement personnel can train and seek advice. The development of expertise and techniques are also a key aspect of the NCIS's activities. We have a National Forensic Science Laboratory and a new cyber center. Also, we serve as the national contact point for international police cooperation. Our responsibilities include being a data controller for national police databases, and we have the operational responsibility for the national DNA database. The Norwegian DNA legislation was adopted in 1997. We then registered only the most serious crimes such as robbery, murder, narcotics, and terrorism. The legislative amendment of 2008 extended the opportunities to register DNA profiles from persons with established identities, and the police got the right to obtain and store DNA samples from convicted offenders of a recordable offense and suspects. The purpose of the new DNA legislation was to reduce high-volume crime rate and to raise the clearance rate. The Oslo University Hospital was made responsible for analyzing the profiles. The DNA register is divided up in 3 different parts: the Attributed DNA Profile Register, the DNA Investigation Register, and the DNA Evidence Register. In addition, we have the Missing Persons Register, a separate register for missing persons and unidentified human remains. Currently, the DNA register consists of 105,966 profiles, the Investigation Register 4,519 profiles, and the Evidence Register 12,896 profiles. Our profile database KRIPOS has profiles grouped by indexes. These are convicted offender, known suspects, forensic unknown, forensic mixture, and unidentified human remains. In searches, these are electronically compared. In our KRIPOS searches, we opt to identify suspects by matching DNA profiles from crime scenes with profiles from convicted offenders and known suspects, and also matching forensic profiles. When we have a match, we call it a hit. Forensic profile hits can be very useful in giving investigative leads and thus aid in solving crimes. And KRIPOS is also used to identify missing and unidentified individuals in the missing persons database. Since the Norwegian DNA reform in 2008, the possibilities for DNA in police work have broadened. New methods such as phenotyping, genetic genealogy, and familiar searching are now being used by law enforcement around the world to move the investigation forward. And although forensic DNA investigation is not used in Norway, it is already implemented and part of the police work in other countries. For instance, in the US, the success of these possibilities has silenced much of the concern by now. Professor Jack Ballantyne, a former member of the US DNA Advisory Board, stated at the 2018 HIDS conference, "Intelligence tool will be used widely shortly. Whole genome sequencing will come and be used, and familiar searching will be standard. Whilst we have the technologies at NCIS to perform familiar searching and our laboratories the tools to conduct phenotyping and more, unlike other countries, we are yet not able to utilize them." With phenotyping and the use of new methods, the police can have a chance at quickly eliminate possible suspects, a most valuable asset in an ongoing criminal investigation. As was the case in the Netherlands, where after a girl was raped and murdered, the focus was quickly put on the residents in a housing community for refugees. By looking at the geographic descent of the unknown suspect based on the DNA, it was established that the offender was a man of northwestern European descent. The police could then turn their investigation and focus in a new direction. Investigative leads are important, and as the Norwegian Biotechnology Advisory Board states in their report, by utilizing these tools, we may gain increased legal certainty, quicker arrests, less costly investigations, and higher precisions. One thing I would like to highlight is, as I have said before, these new methods are for investigative leads only. That is, it begins in the lab and it ends in the lab. Only a restrictive amount of specially trained personnel will be involved, and only certain cases would be eligible for these new methods. An implementation of a successful familiar search program takes time and requires significant resources and staff, so cases must be monitored and carefully chosen. We have formed a working group at NCIS together with Section for Forensic Genetics, Kinship and Identity at Oslo University Hospital, where we map out the possibility for familiar searches. We have the technologies of KRIPOS and familiars in place, but because the laws are silent on the issue of familiar searching, we lack the legal acceptance in our jurisdiction. A full legal review to evaluate whether familiar searching and other new methods possible in DNA police work is authorized in our jurisdiction is important. Since it is decided it must be explicitly authorized by law in order to execute new methods, a program to determine the best legal approach is needed. Many of the commercial DNA databases have now changed their approach and have an informed consent in place for investigative genetic genealogy searches. Now the clients are given the possibility to opt in or to opt out, GEDmatch being one of these. The amount of profiles available for law enforcement because of this are down, but what GEDmatch personnel sees is that 80% of Americans opt in, whereas only 20% of Europeans opt in when given the choice. Americans seem to be much more open to aid law enforcement personnel in solving violent crimes. Is this the case, or are there other underlying reasons for this wide gap? A woman in Washington was surprised when her DNA led to a cousin's arrest in Iowa, but she feels positive about her contribution. "Any murder deserves to be solved," she said. Since 1991, Norway has 34 unsolved murder cases, the youngest person aged 17 and the oldest 94 years old at the time of the homicide. In 2018, it was registered 2,263 sexual assaults in Norway, 82 of these with unknown perpetrator. Given the success other countries have had with new methods in DNA police work, I see no reason why this should not be the case in Norway as well. Some of these cases could find its solution. In order to move forward, NCIS have sent a letter to the Attorney General's office addressing new methods in DNA police work, and also participated in giving input to the Department of Justice and Public Security. We have been cooperating with the Norwegian Biotechnology Advisory Board, looking at the need for using new methods in DNA police work. In 2018, they sent a report to the Department of Justice and Public Security. And some closing remarks. What if the new methods levels the playing field, could protect the innocent, could prevent more serious crimes, could bring closure to victims and their families? Is it worth it? Or are the fear of failure greater than the wish for success? In my work, I hold on to this. We owe it to the victims and their families to give them answers. I wish you an instructive, fruitful, and interesting webinar and look forward to the discussions and the exchange of views. Thank you.